Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and this is the Fairfield circuitry, roger that. I got it to catch the light. Somewhere between esoteric distortion and experimental noisemaker, it can make things gritty. It can make things fuzzy, noisy, or flat out annoying. To understand the roger that is to sort of understand FM radio. The way FM radio works, at least as far as I, a simpleton, think that it works, you have at the radio station an FM modulator. The carrier signal, which is what you tune, your radio to, your car radio to, 99.9 WWCT in Peoria, Illinois, or 98.3 The Vibe, Des Moines Classic Hip Hop. Those are the only two I know by heart anymore. But that's the carrier signal. You tune into the carrier signal. That gets modulated with the audio they actually want to pass. And in your car or in your radio, your Walkman, whatever, there's an FM demodulator, and that's what decodes that FM signal into the audio we hear. There's a sort of simplified FM modulator, demodulator in the roger that, even if the controls don't really betray that. But that's where a lot of the sound starts, where the sound gets generated. And I thought this video would be more about that technology and what manipulating is like, and the video didn't really end up like that. The video ended up being more about, here's this unwieldy distortion, how can we manage it in a bunch of ways to utilize what turns out to be a shockingly flexible pedal. For me, it'll end up being an advanced drive. For people who are more experimental, God, it could be so many different things. But great, that's enough of a primer. I think the pedal is best experienced by listening to it, as many are. This video is brought to you by Fairfield Circuitry and their distributor in my part of the world, Mass Distro. So thanks to both of them. If you're subscribed, thanks for coming back. If you're a patron, really appreciate you. It means the world to me. I am going to KnobCon thanks to my patrons. My hotel expenses are covered by my Patreon money. So thank you very, very much to my patrons. That's all I got to say. Let's listen to this wacky, wacky pedal. Here we are. I've got my Nord Lead 2 plugged in through the roger that and then the Empress reverb. That I'll be throwing in when appropriate, and I'll change patches and things as well. That's all going into my Tascam Model 16 mixer with an aux sent to the oscilloscope. And the roger that is super interesting, and it kind of fits in a place that I don't normally love. I've said a few times, and it's a line I really like because I feel like it's so true for me and myself. I like to be impressed more than I like to be surprised. I want gear that does a thing that I can understand and has controls that I like to get there. Roger that isn't really that. I do understand the idea of it's an FM modulator and an FM demodulator that are imperfect, but the way you manipulate them isn't really with controls that lead me to results I would expect. Mostly my angle is, okay, here's this crazy thing, this anomalous, surprising, esoteric bit of distortion. How do we tame that in, or how do we even sort of harness it? So let's start. Let's talk about what I've managed to get out of this and how I've approached controlling it. First and foremost, there's my drive signal, and that drive signal is present here on drive. A little more gain on tap. All the way up is not unity. It depends on your drive settings because that drive will affect both your wet and your dry. So dry is just the driven signal, and the wet channel is the FM modulator demodulator, which you control with tune and shift and range, affects tune as well. And then this is a sort of filter. So if I just play a chord and hold it, and sweep through tune, you hear all sorts of different crazy artifacts. Sometimes it just sounds like extra drive, sometimes it's noise, sometimes it's like volume dropouts and filter changes. And it isn't increasing those things as you go up. They're just changing. And so I don't know for sure, this is conjecture. I don't like to throw that around, certainly about the functionality of something. What it feels like, and my best guess based on the material that's out there, I would like a little more detail, Fairfield. It sounds to me and seems to me like those different bits of noise and harmonics and distortion are in some way related to the frequency you have here on the tune. So the frequency is going up, but the sort of failure or the inconsistency in the modulator, demodulator isn't changing, at least not with tune. It might change a little bit with shift, I'm not totally sure. But sort of... To summarize, as far as like what you hear, it's like, it doesn't just go up. It's not a linear control. You have to find these sweet spots. And even in a specific spot, the level of the signal you put into it changes not just the amount of drive, but also the sort of artifacts you're hearing. Super, super unique. Little ambiance. Completely right now, then this is what I immediately like. Can appreciate. Here's a distortion achieved in a way that I have never seen before, or never heard anybody even talk about. And that's what's in part so special about this, is like, let's achieve a new effect. Even if it is very, very unwieldy in a lot of settings, if you give it a little bit of time and mark the positions you like. I think it can be quite beautiful. Okay, I'm on a different patch. So I'm going to show you shift when tune is down at 0, which is sort of the only way to get it to not do anything crazy. You can hear shift introducing some resonant filtering. Not a full sweep. Feels kind of just like a low pass, but I want to say band pass because it's radio. But shift does a lot of weird things in tandem with tune. So if I find something really unpleasant on tune, that's reasonably unpleasant. Oh, especially that artifact. And then I just barely change shift, it can become a lot more manageable. And similar to tune, shift is not linear, and shift is doing a bunch of different things. I don't want to call them macro controls, because I don't have specifics as to what's happening in here. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because here, okay, takes the edge off in that first 10%. Filtering in the next 60, 70. And all the way at the end, it's all noise. And those sort of rules have rang true, at least using with synthesizers. I use these, I don't know if you can see that, I bet you can barely see it, this pink-like masking tape, to find some settings I liked. Great, let's get shift and tune down to 0. So they're about as unaffecty as they could be. And then turn on this filter here. 0 is off, 1 is on. It's a low cut and a high cut. It's bandpass filtering, if you want to think of it like that. But I don't remember exactly what they call it in the manual. I'll put it up. It reminds me of the sort of voice range filter on like telephone technology, where it brings where you don't care about information above or below what a voice might be around. I don't know if radio has ever worked that way, or if that's the goal, but it's a sort of additional lo-fi thing, but also a way to tame the results of our FM modulator demodulator. Cool. Okay, good time to mention something else, actually. I'm going to get drive low, shift, and tune to their unaffecty positions. The wet and dry signals are out of phase with each other. So when they're theoretically the same volume, they'll cancel out totally. And then, when we add something like the filter, which only affects the wet channel, the only things that make it through are the differences. So this ends up being sort of mid-scooped while the filter's on. And then we can add all these crazy artifacts to the wet channel. And because there's a difference between the two channels, that's what makes it through. So we can make it sort of more subtle as far as like those artifacts and all the noise would be. Even less. And now, all the stuff that seemed so, like, unreasonable, unfathomably rowdy is a fizz and a rumble. That seems quite well managed. Great. I didn't show you range. So if I start where we started everywhere else, shift, almost at 0, drive out here. See, it's even here. That's very, very loud. I'm definitely going to do something to try and level all these things out. As far as being a noisemaker on its own, I find the upper range to be pretty handy. But it sort of does more of all those things that we heard on the lower range channel. I don't know if that's making it through. It's terrible high-pitched whirring. But let's do what we did before. Mix it kind of low. Without any dry signal. This is what we hear. Noise with hardly any of our note information sort of mattering to the end result. And you get this unique lo-fi buzzing underneath. So I guess to summarize this sort of control section or how to interact with it section, I want you to realize that even though a lot of the time it just sounds insane and unmanageable, you have a lot more ways to tame it, to control it, than it seems at first. You can move tune to a different position, and while you might lose the artifacts that you're appreciating, it might be something manageable. You have this filter. You can simply mix the wet down. You can reduce the drive. You can reduce the input gain. You can push shift, especially past that first 10%, and then definitely into the filtering. That might be a character you don't want as well. And you can stay on the first range instead of the second one, because that's always more manageable. And as far as like what sort of applications you can get out of it, knowing what we know now, it can be a subtle, fuzzy, buzzy layer underneath a pad. Turning it off. Doesn't sound bad, but this has character. Less drive, less wet, shift even higher. Especially if you have settings in place to sort of reduce the impact of it. You can actively change tune. Turn it up just so you can hear it. To make that happen. Especially remembering that these are out of phase. So right now when they're about the same level, what you're getting is just the difference, is just the artifacts. It's just the difference is just the artifacts. With the filtering, you get a version of the dry signal and the artifacts, but with the filtering off, it's just the artifacts. And with a big, hearty dose of delay afterward. That's a ton of texture to a sound that didn't have much before. Great, love that. It's sort of a bold distortion. I would do just the wet signal. Filtering on or off to preference. Off lets you low end kind of come through. Without it. With it. Yeah, bold brush distortion makes it kind of clear. Anyway, I'm going through this sort of normal keyboard section because I think the next two applications end up feeling a little bit better. Ta-da! I don't want to call it a spoiler, but this is something I got for its own video that I just haven't gotten around to yet. But this is an Oberheim DX with the stretch attachment. It's a drum machine. But all that really matters right now, this is a drum machine that uses samples, and I think the Roger That does pretty cool stuff with drum sounds. You can get away with higher gain, you get to hear the dynamics, all sorts of reasons. But anyway, so the sounds on their own. Those are the worst. That cymbal's also pretty bad. I think the shaker's great. I think the kick and the snare are fantastic. And I really like the hi-hat. But how do they sound when you fuck them up? The kick sounds crazy. You can sort of hear at different points in the tune here. It's almost like different amounts of that sort of enveloping on the beginning. And that's really present. If I turn... well, I need to count the faders in the back. The toms will go really low and go for a crazy amount of time, but if you really blow them out, you get to hear with that slow release how the circuit is reacting to all those different levels, and I really, really love it. So what pattern am I on? I think 4, 5, 6, and 7. are the ones I put together. That one's really not hitting right now. Some low end back when I bring in the drive, so you're not distorting the kick so much. You know what? Just moving that there made me realize I really want to filter. Von Gone Paragraphs. Probably also adding some gain here. Another patch. I mean, I just like that. And I think I did one wacky one. Yeah, it turns out I didn't say anything that interesting. So I'm going to splice up a bunch of those little examples, and I'll move right on to my next setup. Here we are. One more setup. This is the Pittsburgh Modular Taiga. If you aren't familiar, it is a 3-oscillator, East and West Coast inspired semi-modular. I have a video just on it. I really think it's spectacular. One of my favorite core sounds. I was going to say right now, but I really mean ever. But that's running through the Roger that, and then the paragraphs in case I need to cut off some of that noisy top end, and the Empress reverb again. I've got something pretty simple on the Taiga, and I will show you. Yes, it just sounds good with the Roger that. Because the harmonics are changing from the sound source here. Some pretty interesting stuff out of Roger that. Just sounds big, just sounds huge, but you'll probably have noticed this T jack. It is a CV input that goes to our tuning, and so what I'm sending to it right now is this envelope 1, which I'm triple checking. You can see it on camera. Looks like yes. I've got bad eyes, so it might just be the reflection on the top knob there. But I'm sending this envelope through this attenuator, this channel of the mixer, into the tuning of the Roger that, and let's listen. Let's add some attack so it swells in. little faster. Super, super cool. The way it works, it's adding the voltage that goes through here to the tuning knob. So with the envelope, every time I press a key, it's like I'm turning the knob up full and then slowly down. Let's increase the contribution. You can hear it going through pretty much the full sweep of tune. And let's actually send the LFO there instead. Where is the LFO? All the way over here. So can you see that LED changing? My bad eyeballs tell me you can. Let's reduce the contribution. Crazy drones. And I bet if I go to range 2, it'll get even worse. These are both pretty simple modulations, but I think they demonstrate the capability of that pretty well. Let's do sample and hold, if I reach down the cable, as triggered by the LFO. It'll be a random value every time you see that flash. Nice. I think that would sound great with a... I think sequenced CV would sound awesome in that. Great. That's really all I needed to show you. Okay, we can modulate the tune, and it does a lot. But I'm actually going to leave what I have plugged in right now, just the sample and hold, to sort of highlight you can use this on its own. You don't need to plug anything into it, and it would be fine if you were just manipulating tune, but I think you get a lot of action from the capability of modulating tune with CV. So if I make it pretty fast, pretty slow, if you just wanted a way to generate, like, nonlinear noise, I've turned on the Fonkan paragraphs for some filtering. I'm going to turn this up. For whatever reason, whatever music you're working on, turns out you need some nonlinear noise. Or you want to collect a bunch of samples that sound like somebody's filtering through a radio. This CV jack is a really great way to do that. Great, that's just a quick little example. And one final thing. You can modulate the tune at audio rates. So this is one of my oscillators. Oops, I had the paragraphs on. Okay. So this is audio rate. Audio rate modulation of the tune. It can be an oscillator. That we can filter down. A couple different things. If I mix back in the sample and hold, and I take this oscillator off of audio rate, so now it's an LFO. You can go back to just wacky noises. Especially with a strangely wave-folded oscillator. It sounds really, really cool. Bring in some more paragraphs. Filter it down a bit. And there's another iteration of this as a noisemaker. So there you go. There's all sorts of modulation capabilities with that CV in. Even though it seems like, oh, I can just turn the knob automatically, but really it opens it up. Really, it opens up to a whole nother class of user. So there you go. That's all I have to say. My name is Jorb. I love gear. This is, to me, a new distortion. This is a new way to achieve distortion. And if I ever do... and that's probably the way I'm most likely to utilize it. I don't have a super huge need for unwieldy noisemakers in a lot of the projects I work on. If it ever comes up, boy, do I know the one. But for me, this is a sort of very special distortion, a very unique dirt and drive pedal. So there you go. My name is Jorb. I love gear. That includes the Roger That RF0636. Thank you, Fairfield. My name is Jorb. I love gear. Thanks to Fairfield and Masters for one more time. Thanks for watching and so long.